So, today we're going to dive into a single, really profound principle that gives us a clear answer to one of life's biggest questions. And that question is, how do we balance perfect, divine rules with our imperfect human reality? We're going to unpack a rule that is both spiritually deep and just incredibly practical.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with a dilemma that, honestly, we all face. Then we'll introduce the prophetic rule that's designed to solve it. From there, we'll break down its two key parts, uncover a historical warning that's kind of hidden inside it, and finally, see how this ancient wisdom is such a powerful tool for us today.
You know, at the core of any system of belief or law, there's this constant tug of war, isn't there? It's between the ideal and the real, between the rules we're given and our actual ability to follow them perfectly. And look, this isn't just some abstract theological question. Think about your job, your fitness goals, pretty much any area of your life that has rules. When you're given a bunch of do's and don'ts, how much wiggle room is there? Is perfection the only thing that counts? Or is there some built-in understanding for our human limits? And this is where the beauty of the Islamic tradition just really shines. A single, super concise statement from the Prophet Muhammad can give us a whole framework to answer this exact question. Okay, so this right here, this is the bedrock for our entire discussion. Just notice its beautiful two-part structure. He gives one approach for the things that are forbidden, the don'ts, and a totally different, much more flexible approach for what's commanded, the do's. And that distinction, that is the absolute key to everything. All right, let's really dig into the heart of this principle. The genius here is all about understanding the massive difference between being told to do something versus being told to avoid something. And the logic behind this is just so smart. A prohibition just asks us not to do something, to just leave it alone. That's an act of abstention, and that's something pretty much anyone can do, no matter what their situation is. But a command, well, that requires you to actually create or perform an action. And that naturally depends on your capacity, your health, your wealth, your knowledge. In Arabic, this is called istita'a, or ability. And this is exactly where the principle brings in this incredible divine mercy. Let's geek out on the language for a second, because this is so precise and so cool. The Arabic word used for avoiding prohibitions here is fajtanibuhu. Now, this isn't just a simple don't do it. The word comes from the root jamb, which means side. So the command is literally to put yourself on a completely different side, to get into a different lane from the forbidden act. It's about avoiding not just the act itself, but all the roads and excuses that might lead you there. It's a command for total preemptive separation. Okay, so this naturally brings up a really important question, right? It's kind of the classic stress test for this whole idea. If prohibitions are so absolute, what happens in a life or death situation? How does the law deal with a state of real necessity? Does this super rigid rule bend, or does it just break? And here is the absolutely brilliant solution. It's not an exception that breaks the rule. No. Instead, the whole legal framework is designed so that, in a state of true dire necessity, the prohibition itself is temporarily lifted for that person. The act literally stops being forbidden in that specific context. So the command to avoid what is forbidden stays perfectly intact, because for that person, in that moment, there is nothing forbidden to avoid. The law itself is designed to flex with the harshest realities of human life. It's so elegant. Now let's go back to that foundational text we saw a minute ago. Because the prophet didn't just give us this powerful rule, he finished it with a really serious warning from history. He explained why this principle is so important by showing us what happens when people get it wrong. He points to two specific things that led to the downfall of communities before, especially the children of Israel, as we read in the Quran. First was their excessive questioning, and this wasn't asking to learn. It was asking to argue, to find loopholes, to basically create excuses for not doing anything. And the second failure was even more direct, just actively opposing and disobeying the guidance their prophets brought.
And I have to make this super clear. This is not a knock on learning or asking sincere questions. Islam is a tradition that celebrates knowledge. The warning here is all about the intention. It's a warning against a kind of intellectualism that gets in the way of action. It's like spending all your time endlessly debating the perfect workout plan instead of just going to the gym. It's a kind of analysis paralysis, where talking becomes a substitute for actually doing the work.
So, we've broken down the principle, we've looked at the history. What does all this actually mean for us, right here, right now? How does this ancient wisdom make our lives better today?
From this one simple principle, a whole worldview just opens up. Scholars have pointed to tons of benefits, like encouraging action over argument or having reverence for God's boundaries. But we're going to zoom in on two of the most powerful and personal ones: the idea of ease and the sheer vastness of what's allowed. Let's start with what might be the biggest benefit of all. This principle is basically a cure for religious anxiety. By explicitly tying what you have to do to what you're actually able to do, it lifts that crushing burden of being asked to do the impossible. It replaces the fear of never measuring up with a relationship based on love, gratitude, and just doing your best. This principle also shows us a fundamental truth about this whole way of life. The list of prohibitions is very short and very specific. Think of them like a guardrail along a beautiful cliffside road. The guardrail isn't there to trap you, it's there to protect you from falling off. Everything else, that whole vast open field of life, is permissible. The default is freedom, with just a few clear, protective boundaries. So we'll leave you with this to think about. When you really consider this divine balance, that firm, clear line on prohibitions, combined with this merciful flexibility on commands, how might that shift the way you look at your own obligations and goals? Does it maybe make the path forward feel a little more manageable, a little more merciful, and ultimately a little more motivating?